Well, thank you so much for everybody coming out tonight, y'all. It's gonna be a real special night. From the whole Wandering Treehouse team, we appreciate the love that you all are showing, and for us to all gather here for Palestine. It's gonna be a very special night because we have a lot of different things planned that y'all are gonna get to see as the night continues. We have, of course, these amazing artists who are gonna be playing, but we also are going to have some very wonderful speakers who are going to give us just a myriad of different things we're gonna talk about today. So it's gonna be different moves today, y'all. We're gonna be getting into some deep stuff. We're gonna have some fun. So just ride it out with us, and we appreciate it. We're actually gonna go ahead and get started. How it's gonna go, y'all? We're gonna have some speakers, artists, throughout the rest of the night. And we actually will have our first speaker about to come up to the stage. I'll get more into it. By the way, I'm Raiden Paris with Wandering Treehouse. So, how y'all doing? But our first speaker of the night is gonna be Saeed. And I'm gonna ask you all, I know it's gonna be a lot of different things going on tonight, but please, when the speakers are talking, give them your attention, give them your respect, and open yourself up for everything I'm about to say. So, without further ado, I'm gonna let Saeed come up to the stage. Thank you. Make some noise for Saeed.
Hello, everybody. My name is Reflief. I'm here representing the University of Louisville Students for Justice in Palestine. I'm so happy to be here with all of you today among people who refuse to be silent in the face of genocide and who refuse to let history be rewritten. The struggle for Palestine is not just the struggle of one people. It is the struggle of all oppressed people resisting colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. And now I know people have different levels of knowledge on Palestine, and I'm going to give the briefest, very, very brief kind of sketch through the history, but talking about members of my family. In 1948, after decades of British colonial rule and the violent displacement of Palestinians under the Zionist movement, the Nakba, or the catastrophe, was carried out. Over 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homeland, entire villages were erased, and a settler colonial state was imposed on their land. My great-grandfather was displaced. He was forced to walk to Lebanon with his whole family, where he eventually raised his family in a refugee camp. But the ethnic cleansing didn't stop there. In 1967, the Nakba, or the setback, displaced my grandfather to Jordan. My father, on the other hand, was born in the West Bank in 1963, and he was among many young men in Palestine who got detained without charge, tortured just for the sake of torture. The daily humiliations of life under apartheid in the West Bank, checkpoints, arrests, and settler violence eventually forced my dad and his brothers out too in the 1980s. This ethnic cleansing isn't just a history lesson. It continues today through apartheid policies, illegal settlements, airstrikes, and a blockade that starves and suffocates Gaza. The most recent arm of this ongoing Nakba was the genocide on Gaza. A group of doctors and nurses now estimate the death toll at least over 92,000, well above the numbers we usually hear, with over 13,000 children confirmed dead. With the so-called ceasefire in Gaza, Israel has cut off all aid trucks, and they have cut off electricity and water. They are currently trying to displace people who have just returned home after persevering through 15 months of genocide, only to be displaced once again to the south. This is all in preparation for a second onslaught that aims to erase the Palestinian people of Gaza. What the settler colonial state fails to understand, time and time again, is that the Palestinian people have shown us they will not be erased. What the U.S. administration doesn't understand is that the people of Gaza will never allow for a colonial Riviera of the Middle East built over the bodies of its indigenous people. The Palestinian people, despite despite all their suffering, cannot afford to be cynical. What we sometimes fail to understand about the Palestinians is that the steadfastness is not some superpower. Steadfastness, or sumud in Arabic, comes from the necessity to fight to continue to exist against every colonial effort to wipe them out. They've survived through culture, through education, through generations passing down the stories of their land and their ancestors. They have survived through resilience, through farming the land that was stolen from them, through poetry, through art, and through refusing to forget. They have survived through resistance in all its forms because resistance is survival. But what happens when an entire people resists genocide, when they refuse to be erased? The Western media tries to erase them in a different way. They try to rewrite the narrative. We see it every day. Palestinians are called terrorists for fighting for their lives, while their murderers are called defending themselves. Bombing refugee camps is called retaliation, and the deliberate starving of millions in Gaza is called a security measure. Massacres of entire families are brushed aside as unfortunate casualties. When hospitals were bombed, the media questioned whether they were bombed at all. And when journalists were assassinated, their deaths were downplayed or ignored. We're asked, what about Israel's right to exist? And when we speak out, when students organize, when activists march, when people demand an end to the genocide, we are labeled outside agitators or extremists. But let's be clear, it is our duty to oppose genocide, and it is our duty to say that a people deserve to live on their land. We too cannot afford to be cynical. We must continue to fight and make our voices heard. We will not stand by as our government props up a genocidal state, and it starts here at home. The University of Louisville has consortium partnerships with corporations like IBM, Boeing, Remington Arms, and Honeywell. IBM provides the data systems that power Israel's apartheid surveillance state. Boeing produces the bombs that level Palestinian homes. Remington Arms supplies the bullets that gun down Palestinians in their streets. And Honeywell contributes to the very weapons used to massacre families in Gaza. These are the companies profiting off of Palestinian blood, and U of L is proudly partnered with them. And then there's the university's endowment. Millions of dollars flowing into funds that directly support the Israeli companies that uphold the genocidal state and arm them. Every dollar spent on these corporations is a dollar invested in genocide. But here's the truth. U of L does not have to be complicit in genocide. It chooses to be. And just as it chooses to be complicit, we can choose to resist. Our work starts there. We will not stop pressuring the university to divest from all of these ties, and we will certainly not be cowed by the environment of fear that the Trump administration is attempting to create. Arresting a Palestinian activist and trying to deport Mahmoud Khalid is an effort to silence us from speaking out against the evils of U.S. empire. That effort is doomed. We will only get louder. We will show them that repression will only cause us to resist more and more and in bigger numbers. We will continue to fight, to organize, to demand justice until Palestine is free. Thank you. Free Palestine.
Shout out Wandering Treehouse for organizing this, for getting the community out together, for raising all these funds, for inviting all these amazing performers out to speak tonight, and for inviting me to come out and speak. So make some noise for Wandering Treehouse, y'all. Some of y'all may recognize me, some of y'all may not. I'm an organizer, Saeed, with the Louisville Students for Justice in Palestine, and I'm honored to have been invited to speak out tonight. And, seeing the community come out today in such a strong manner and in such a strong fashion for Palestine tonight only reinforces my belief that, as the speaker before me mentioned, Sana, that sometimes it's easy to get cynical, but seeing everyone out here tonight, seeing the community show out in such a strong way, it really reinforces my belief that Palestine will be free. It reinforces my belief that one day we will get to explore the old city of Jerusalem with its history and its culture, free from the screams and harassment of Israeli settler citizens. It fills me with resolve that one day we'll get to walk along the beachside coast of Gaza, free from the bombs and missiles dropped from the sky by Israeli generals. It pushes me to fight for a world where we will get to explore the glorious and beautiful nature of Nablus with its beautiful green olive trees and its lush greenery, free from the destruction and the ecocide at the hands of Israeli arsonists. It reminds me that one day we will get to explore the streets and markets of Jenin, free from Israeli bulldozers uprooting the city. It grounds me in the fact that one day we will get to walk the streets of Hebron, not having to look above our heads and worrying that Israeli settlers will be throwing trash and toxic waste over our heads. It reminds me once again that not only will Palestine be free, but Palestine will be free in our lifetime. My maternal mother, grandmother, and grandfather were kicked out of their homes in Jerusalem by Israeli terrorists in 1948. They never got the chance to live in their homes in Jerusalem again, and the only opportunities they had to visit Jerusalem were short summer trips, and that would barely even be a week, despite their homes in Jordan not even being an hour away. In spite of these conditions, and in defiance of Israeli terrorists, my grandfather made his final trip to Palestine 10 years ago. And in his final trip to Palestine 10 years ago, he made his way to Friday prayer in Al-Aqsa Mosque, bowed his head down in subservience to Allah, and died. He was perfectly healthy and had absolutely no prior knowledge that he was going to die on that day. And yet, in spite of this, in spite of this oppression, in spite of the onslaught and the death and the destruction and the dehumanization he had to experience every day of his life since 1948, Allah blessed my grandfather, and he let my grandfather's final act be an act of defiance against Israel. He let his final act be being able to bow his head down in subservience to the God he worships and the city he was kicked out of in front of the same terrorists that kicked him out of his home 76 years ago. It was one final spit in the face to the terrorists who had stolen everything from him, or so they thought. Though they may have stolen his home, his country, his livelihood, his community, and even the clothes off of his back, they failed to realize that there's one thing the oppressor can never steal from the oppressed. In spite of all, my grandfather held on to his national pride, his resilience, and his connection to the land, and never let Israeli settlers steal it from them. And this is something that oppressors can never seek to understand when it comes to analyzing the mind of the oppressed. This is the legacy I have the honor of inheriting. And it is not a special story by any means. Each and every Palestinian you meet has a similar story, a story of theft, displacement, death, and torture at the hands of Israeli terrorists. And on the flip side, in spite of generational trauma that each and every Palestinian is so accustomed to, they will all tell you the story of how their families and themselves, historically and in the present, continue to fight in spite of it all. To be Palestinian is to have a homeland but no home. It's having to wake up every day knowing that your parents and grandparents can never enter their homes again because John from Brooklyn decided that it was promised to him 3,000 years ago. Yet when we decide to fight this injustice, our language is policed, and we have to abide by a certain set of rules put in place by liberals, by the government, by the US, by whatever country we're in at the time, just so they can even hear us out. Even then, that's not enough. They'll listen to your plight, but won't look you in the eyes. They'll hear about your family back home suffering at the hands of Israeli colonizers, and only then looking you in the eyes, but just to ask you, what about October 7th? What about October 7th? To be Palestinian is to have to compartmentalize yourself into a perfect victim just so you can even be seen as a human. Fuck that. We're expected to live alongside people that want the total eradication of our people and not scream. We're expected to clock into jobs that line the pockets of Israeli companies and not revolt. We're expected to go to universities that invest billions into the Israeli genocide on Palestine and not fight back. They pass laws that they think will scare us. They detain and arrest us just like Mahmoud Khadil just this week, and they think that will stop us. They suspend us, beat us, survey us, and hope to stop us from even daring to fight back against the militarization of our campuses in the name of Israeli interests. What they don't realize is that I, like my grandfather before me, and all of us, like our ancestors before us, have something that can never be washed away, beaten, repressed, or stolen away. An inseparable connection to our land. Time washes away all sins. In the words of Mahmoud Darwish, the wars will end and the leaders will shake hands, and that old woman will remain waiting for her martyred son, and that girl will wait for her beloved husband, and the children will wait for their heroic father. I do not know who sold the homeland, but I know who paid the price, end quote. And just like the fight against Nazism, the civil rights struggle, the Vietnam War movement, apartheid South Africa, and BLM, students and organizers always go from vilified at the times of these struggles to vindicated just a few decades down the line. These universities will whitewash their crimes and claim to have stood with the students during these times of injustice, but we know best that they can attempt to rewrite history all they want, but the only thing they ever have and ever will stand with is whatever will keep their pockets green with money and their hands red with blood. The University of Louisville is no different. I've been speaking in abstract terms this whole time, talking about the university does this, the university does that. Whole time, the university, a 5-minute drive from here, is not any better, and in fact, sucks just as much, if not more, than every other university in this nation. The fact of the matter is that the University of Louisville, not even a 5-minute drive from here, is just as committed to lining its pockets with money drenched in blood. The University of Louisville, the same institution that claims to stand for LGBTQ+ and diverse values, maintains partnerships with the same weapon manufacturers and warmongers currently enabling the genocide in Gaza. This year marks 40 years since the University of Louisville divested from South Africa. We knew all too well that history tends to repeat itself, and that soon enough, we will push U of L to divest from the apartheid state of Israel. And we know that as history has repeated itself before, it will again. It won't come through holding hands and saying kumbaya and singing fun chants and having good times, but it's gonna come through the power of the people, because that's where power lies. Power doesn't lie in any institutions, power doesn't lie in any money, power doesn't lie in any capital. All power is in the people, and it's only through the people that the people can realize their own power, because the people are the manufacturers of their own destiny. So I want to invite you all at Louisville SJP on Instagram. We have a rally this Tuesday to pressure the student government to call on the University of Louisville to divest from Israel. Find the details on our Instagram, and I want to see each and every single one of us practice what we preach. I want to see each and every one of us push for the U of L to divest, to cut its partnerships, to commit to divesting any funds that's complicit in the genocide in Israel from its $998 million endowment, and I want to make sure that we're the ones to do it, because as I just said, and as I'm going to keep saying, and as I want y'all to say after me, power's in the people. I'm going to close this off. Off real quick, guys, but I just want to ground us really quickly in the fact it's hard, again, it's easy to get cynical, but I know for a fact, in spite of the genocide, in spite of the apartheid, in spite of the blockade, we will return. In spite of Israeli settlers saying otherwise, in spite of the government pushing us and repressing us, we will return. I say this not as me just guessing, not as me hoping, but I say this as a promise. I promise you all that each and every single one of us will get to walk through a free Palestine. Thank you all, and once again, free Palestine.
Keep it going, y'all. Keep it going. Thank you, Saeed. Oh, all right. First off, I just want to say that power is in the people. We've got to see it through this show, even. Like, when Z-Bar, shut down our show, what did you all do? All we could do is make a post. You all came together, you all went and pressured them in the same way that we can pressure U of L, in the same way that we can pressure our government, in the same way we can pressure anybody who stands in our way, because the people are where the power resides. So, with that being said, people, we're going to take a little bit of a break while the next act sets up. So go ahead and socialize, do your thing. And we'll get back to it. Thank you. We're almost there. We're almost there. All right. Thank you.
Hello. So I'm Dr. Farah. I'm the co-founder and member of the Louisville Ceasefire Coalition, and I have worked locally in public health, equity. I've also worked for the past 25 years in trying to end US wars in the Middle East, and that includes as a volunteer first responder in Gaza, and I'm also a very proud former member of the Students for Justice in Palestine. So I've had the profound privilege of working alongside paramedics in Gaza, in Jabalia, in Beit Hanoun, in Rafah and beyond, serving with the Civil Defense and the Palestinian Medical Relief Committees, many of whom have lost their lives responding to this genocide. I witnessed firsthand the systemic targeting of first responders, with well over 1,000 healthcare workers killed since the start of the war. Among them is the incredibly brave Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, former director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital, who was arrested when Israeli forces raided the hospital last December 2024 and has since been held without due process in Israeli prison. I've also had the privilege of meeting many Gazan journalists, including Hamza El-Dahdu and Samar Abu Daka, who are among the more than 170 Palestinian journalists killed since October 7th, the highest number of journalists killed in any conflict in modern history. When I think of them and I remember them, I think not only of their profound courage in the face of the unimaginable, but also of their tenderness, their humor, and their cynicism, born from year after year of witnessing a distorted narrative, one that has dehumanized, one that is rooted in racism, one that strips and diminishes and contracts people's aspirations for freedom and justice and rights into a narrative of the most basic of survival. I think of the duality of their strength and their courage, but also their deep vulnerability. Their vulnerability has been glimpsed in some of the videos many of us have watched on social media. I think particularly of Salman al-Bashir, the Palestine TV correspondent who midstream removed his bulletproof vest, rendered meaningless when attacks often come from helicopter drones, removed his helmet and stood there shaking in front of the world, revealing, I think, that fear. Because for all of our comments about Palestinian strength and their courage and their humanity, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble here. And each time they get into an ambulance or a car, I think of Hamza, the firstborn child of Wa'al al-Dahdu, Al Jazeera's bureau chief, known locally as the Mountain of Palestine, but also a member of a profoundly kind, hospitable, and loving family. I think of Wa'al for all of his strength, standing in front of that camera repeatedly after the loss of his wife and his children, and then after the loss of Hamza, injured, vulnerable, exposed. But I also think of Wa'al in times when we used to visit his office in Gaza City, how he'd always pull out a drawer and offer us a tin of something homemade by his wife. Or how he would stop work in the middle of the day when it wasn't a time of crisis and take his whole team to the beach where they barbecue fish and swim and just be human and real and friends for a moment. But I also think of Hamza and Samer on the day that they were killed, and their portraits are in the back. Because they were in the south of Gaza when they were told where they were told they'd be safe. I think of them on that day in the sun, right? The sun on their faces, the windows open, maybe joking with each other, maybe listening to music. That feeling of temporary safety. And I think of Bisan Auda, Bisan the wizard, on the day Samer and Hamza were killed, sitting in a car, these huge tears seeping out of her eyes as she listened to another Palestinian hero and storyteller and songstress, Rim Bana, who sang the most beautiful songs of Palestinian history and existence beyond massacre, beyond suffering, beyond death, beyond blood, beyond grief. But a Palestinian identity that is deeply rooted in culture, in celebration, in community, in joy, in food, and music. And if we can do anything to honor that long list of the names of the dead, nearly 100,000 officially, the doctors, the nurses, the first responders, the elders, the babies, the students, the social workers, the drag queens, the bakers, the fishermen, the poets, all of them. It is to make space for a Palestine that is not colonized solely by grief or by this suffering. Because Palestinians in their storytelling, Bisan, Hind, Jum'ah, Palestinians in their storytelling demand that we resist the shrinking of our collective imagination into the saturated images of horror that flood our screens and pull us all into despair, and instead return to the expansiveness of movement, of collective action, the making of art and community, and the power and beauty, like in this room, that come from it. With the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia student taken by ICE, there has been a deepening alignment between the Palestinian and migrant justice movements, because at their core, these struggles are intertwined. The conversation around them often returning to questions of borders, who they serve, who they exclude, and how they are racialized and militarized to enforce oppression. The fight for Palestinian liberation is not a series of isolated events or acts. It is a movement, a living, growing, collective force. We must not only plan our own actions, but look around us, see where others are moving, and actively weave our efforts together, connecting the fundraisers like this amazing, so impressive fundraiser. Yes, exactly. Connecting these fundraisers to student occupations, the blockades, the BDS campaign, the work of the Palestinian diaspora, and every act of resistance into something greater than the sum of its parts. And whilst we all might have different levels of connection to Palestine, I think we all carrying vicarious trauma, this collective moral injury of genocide that affects us all. And we are overwhelmed. I certainly feel that. Our collective and individual nervous systems are on fire because we are constantly engaged and constantly absorbing. So then, how do we sustain ourselves? How do we center care, collective care, as a core principle of our political organizing? How do we ensure that our interactions with one another are rooted in that same care? The care we hold for our Palestinian siblings, our comrades, our people? And how do we bring that care into the way that we communicate? Because in activism and organizing, we know that tensions arise, that people grow abrupt and abrasive, that there are ruptures. There are moments when human communication fails, but this struggle deserves our eyes to be on the long game. And within that focus, I just want to end with just two thoughts. One is an analogy from the Palestinian-Canadian human rights lawyer, Diana Boutou, who talked about creating a choir of resistance. And just like in any choir, as we all sing the narrative of love or defiance or solidarity, people need to pause, to take breath, to steady themselves. And when one person stops to breathe, another will continue singing. And then when they need to pause, someone else will carry the song, and so we keep moving. And another analogy I thought a lot about is that of hospitals in Gaza as temples of humanity, much like lighthouses. And in this storm of violence and injustice and oppression and so much pain, there are lighthouses like this gathering tonight, signaling clarity, courage, and deep care. We need to find them, and we need to be them. Sending signals to each other, reminding one another that you are not alone. So breathe out the grief and breathe in courage. And please keep doing that, because that lighthouse in Gaza needs that from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You all, we have one more speaker for the night. Whew, man, a lot of emotions in this room tonight. But we appreciate y'all for being here, for riding it out with us, for being here for every moment, the highs, lows, every part of it. So we're gonna get to this last speaker, and we're gonna just enjoy the rest of the night after that. But first, give us some more space, give us more of your energy, give us more of your love, and give a hand up for Sabrina, please.
Hi everyone. So some of you may know me, but most of you may not. When I was asked to speak about what it means to be Palestinian, in these events, normally I talk about our history, what's currently happening, my family's story, our story as a people, and why that story needs to be heard. But you're already here. You paid a cover. You came here on a rainy Saturday. This is coming out of your time and your money, so I trust you understand what's going on and that you already care. And for that, I want to say thank you. But also, instead, I want to talk about something I don't often discuss: the complex, confusing relationship we Palestinians have with our own identity and the power that our identity holds. I was born and raised here in Louisville, but this may come as a shock. I didn't know I was actually Palestinian until nearly high school, sort of. So I knew I was Arab, and I had an idea that we had ancestry in Palestine and that my family lived in Jordan. I had a very vague understanding that I was Palestinian, and a vague understanding that it was something that was private. If people ask where I was from, I was to say I was from Jordan instead of Palestine. For my father and Palestinians like him, especially those who relocated to the West, it was in the secrecy that there was safety. Initially, I was angry at my father for withholding this part of myself and withholding this part of himself. This explanation for why he is the way he is and why I am the way I am. But the more I learned about Palestine and my family's story, the more I understood his choice. Because, you see, to be Palestinian is to know pain, but to be Palestinian is also to relinquish your safety in every sense of what that means. This was something my father wanted to prevent and something I did not fully experience until I fully embraced my identity, and he was right. To be Palestinian costed me friendships. As a student on the University of Louisville's campus, it costed me relationships with professors. My car was vandalized with Sharpie with the word terrorist written on it in all caps. I was harassed by administrators who held a phone to my face, inches away from it, interrogating me if I was a student, what I was doing as my Palestinian friends and I put up posters. We had the police called on us by these administrators. They came to campus. I have countless angry strangers approaching me with racist vitriol at best, and at worst, they approached me with a gun. My safety was compromised. To be Palestinian is to be a target. To be allied with Palestinians is to be a target, so thank you all for coming. For many Palestinians, our existence, our very existence, costs us our life, even here in the United States. And this was my experience as a fair-skinned American woman. The pain of my identity is not just a past pain. It was a present bullseye over my head and over the heads of anyone who dare threaten the killing machine that is the United States and Israel. You see, our name is more than just a name. To claim our Palestinian identity is to claim every single aspect of it, both the beauty of Palestine and the brutality of the occupation. My father, though he was born and raised in Nablus, and though my family had been in Palestine and Haifa for hundreds of years, a free Palestine for him was a painful dream. And then, so for me, it was a painful dream of a dream. I would love to say I have no shortage of stories of my father's childhood in Palestine, but I do. Like many Palestinians, he seldom spoke of his childhood. And the few stories we have were told in moments of accidental vulnerability. Like many Palestinians, most of my family's story were overheard bits of conversation, photographs, mentions of deeds my great-grandfather still had, or the key to my house that my grandmother kept in her bedroom. It was breadcrumbs, it was what we could take, it was sorrow. For my father, who was a child during the Six-Day War and a witness to its atrocities, and for many Palestinians, it is too difficult to dissect the memories from the pain. The memories of our old home in Nablus are tainted with the knowledge that terrorists, that settlers, now live in this home. Its very memories occupied. The story of a beloved padlock gifted by my dad's grandfather to him ended with the lock being dropped into a mass grave, accidentally, out of shock of the smell of the bodies. The stories of the beaches on Haifa from my grandfather were on the same beaches that these mass graves were constructed. So no, he did not tell many of these stories to us. The theft of childhood and the defiling of memories is a constant for all occupied people and all colonized people everywhere. To be forced to forsake your identity in exchange for a better life, for any life at all. The weight of a Palestinian identity is a weight that is too heavy for many to hold, and certainly one that would be reluctant to pass to their children. And this is something the occupation knows. This is how it works. This is something it uses to its advantage. But whether I knew I was Palestinian or not did not matter. My Palestinian identity was inescapable. It shaped every single relationship in my family. Every single relationship my father had, my uncles have, my cousins have. It shaped how I was raised, it shaped my own trauma, and it will shape how my children are raised. And this point is crucial. To be Palestinian, even as a born and raised American, is not a passive act. Our identity is one that has been withheld, that has been politicized and weaponized. To state I am Palestinian is in itself an act of protest. And as a Palestinian in the United States, we are undeniably removed from the cause and the work being done on the ground in Palestine by those so brave. But there is a privilege in this degree of separation, a privilege that our parents and many other Palestinians did not have, a privilege my father did not have. And that is the position of being in the belly of the beast, to not only process this trauma and process our struggle, but to make it heard, the position, the privilege to be listened to, the privilege to be understood. There is a story by the Palestinian author Ghassan Kanafani about 3 Palestinian refugees in Jordan and an Iraqi driver. The Iraqi was smuggling them to Kuwait for work, where they heard tales of a better life. They would hide in the back of the driver's oil rig through the scorching desert drive. The driver alerted the 3 men in the back that there would be checkpoints, and during these checkpoints, they had to be absolutely silent. They could not make a noise. Now, one of the stops took longer than usual, and after driving out of sight from the passengers, the driver looked behind to check on his own passengers. And all 3 men were dead. And in the story, the driver weeps and he asks himself, why didn't they knock? They could have knocked. Why didn't they knock before they died? The distance from this trauma, this separation, granted me a certain privilege to knock. And I want to thank everyone for coming today. As someone with an identity that has been treated as a secret, as something to be kept in private, something that is shameful and painful, and something that must be secret so as not to step on the toes of those in power, to have an event like this a year or 2 ago even was unimaginable. I commend the organizers for using our name in the event, for recognizing the power in our name, and for the resilience in the backlash that they've faced for using our name. We are Palestinians. Like many families, my family started in Haifa, went to Nablus, went to Jerusalem, and eventually ended up as refugees to Jordan. Those now in Gaza are not from Gaza. Many are from where my family is from, many know my family. We are Palestinians. We commend every single person who joined us in our cause, all of you for coming, for risking your jobs, your safety, and your community to stand up for what is right. Community is sacrifice. I want to thank everyone for coming to listen to us, to listen to our knocks. A free Palestine is not a pipe dream, it is a promise. We will return.
Thank you. Let's get some more noise for Sabrina, please. There's power in community, y'all. Everyone you see out here, everyone who's come together, we can make things change. Us. Now, there's never been a better moment. The next best moment was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago. We're never gonna have a better moment than right now to try to change everything. I wanna go ahead and read a number out to y'all right now. Win and lows. Here it is. So far, and this isn't counting, we've raised $2,570 just on the GoFundMe. We've raised $520 on the Venmo. And I don't even know how much money we made on the Cash App and the Cash. Y'all did that. You all came together. Y'all made this happen. I want y'all to remember that. This is all amazing to come together, hear these people speak, vibe out, give money, raise awareness, but we have to remember that the people have the power. So, that being said, I'm gonna ask y'all to take a little bit of a breather, let that flow through you, and we're gonna end out our show, okay? We got 3 acts left. Take this time. Thank you. We just checked the Cash App, we checked the, and we counted up all the cash, hand picked. You wanna say the number? All right, go ahead and say the number. All right, y'all, drum roll, please. Come on.
Meow. Together, as a community, we raised $5,200. At the show alone, $2,550. Through the GoFundMe, which I hope you all continue to support.
It's still going.
It's still going. We have a goal of 3,000. You want to know how much we made? Let's see, $2,680. Again, in total, $5,200, y'all. Boots, baby, boots. Yeah, we tore it bad, didn't we? Yeah, okay, well, that's the night. Thank you all so much, and,
Can all the Treehouse get to the stage, please? Treehouse, yeah, Treehouse. Where my Treehouse at? Treehouse, come on.
we're missing Malc and Malcolm right now. They had to dip the fuck out boots, but, that worked. But this is Wandering Treehouse, y'all. You know, this started like 4 months ago. You know, we reached out to Zanzibar, appropriately, sent them a nice old email, and, you know, about 3.5 months later, they were like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm a little scared of boots. And we were like, well, that kind of sucks. We exposed them. They came back. They were like, can we like actually have you all back now that we're like facing negative community, you know, like community harassment? Sorry. And then we reached out to Woodbine Chamber, and they welcomed us fully. So thank you all for coming out tonight. We did this together as a team, Wandering Treehouse, and with all of you here now, and the people that haven't been able to make it, and the people that made it or donated to the GoFundMe. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much.
So we appreciate you all. This is what we call it. That's a wrap. We're gonna have some more shows, y'all. Check out the Wonder Treehouse account on Instagram. And thank y'all so much. Community means so much to us, so thank you. But be safe getting home, y'all. We'll call it. Have a good one. I wish we had some music or something like that. Let's send these people home.